Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Superhuman Radio. Today is September 16th, 2020. We have a really important show today. Anybody who's been watching me for any amount of time knows that we were the first to ever talk about rapamycin, senescent cells, and the potential for rapamycin to actually affect aging positively. There's always been a question about rapamycin for many of us who like to build muscle. And that is, does it interfere by its effects on attenuating mTOR? And we're going to put that one to rest today. And it's very exciting. You won't hear this show on any other podcast because this kind of stuff doesn't interest people except deep thinkers like us. Before we get started, oh, and by the way, if you're watching the show live, you're on YouTube. We're not going to be streaming live on Facebook anymore. I'm going to talk about this at the end of the show. But we're done with Facebook. We're really done with it. We're just not going to participate with live streaming over there. Legendary Foods is our title sponsor. They make the best low carb, low to no sugar snacks in the world. And you won't believe that there's no sugar in many of them. They have flavored nut butters that are out of this world. They have seasoned almonds that are out of this world. And their new signature product, which is the Tasty Pastry, is basically a Pop-Tart with 9 grams of high leucine protein, less than 1 gram of sugar, and a total of 3 to 4 impact carbohydrates, depending on the flavor you choose. It's fantastic, especially since the kids are going back to school. This is a snack that you won't feel bad about putting in your kid's lunchbox. Go to eatlegendary.com. Use the code SHR10, not only to save 10% off, but to let them know that you heard about it here on Superhuman Radio. Okay. My guest today is Dr. Daniel Ham. How you doing, Dr. Ham?
Hi, Carl. I'm good.
I'll call you Daniel. You prefer being called Daniel or Dr. Ham?
That's fine, yeah. No, Daniel's fine.
Okay. So we're talking to you all the way from Switzerland, which is wonderful. And you were the lead author on a paper that looked at the effects of rapamycin on protein synthesis and muscle in aging, because as we get older, sarcopenia is a really big problem today. Let's talk about sarcopenia first of all. For a long time, I said on this show, muscle is metabolic currency. So get into the gym and make a deposit today. The gaining and losing of muscle by the medical orthodoxy, let's say over the past 50 years, has been looked at as muscle really isn't essential for anything but being ambulatory. But now we know that muscle is actually a gland. It produces hormones. It helps us manage blood sugar levels and all these other wonderful things. What research preceded this that made you think rapamycin may have effect on sarcopenia?
Yeah, well, it's a good question. And I mean, the original way we came to this work was, I guess, because when it comes to mTOR, the muscle field and the aging field, they seem to have completely opposite ideas about whether mTOR is good or whether mTOR is bad. And in the aging field, it's been long accepted that suppressing mTOR is one of the best ways to extend lifespan. So things like rapamycin, protein restriction, calorie restriction, all
intermittent fasting.
Right,
I'm
sure.
Well. My last meal last night was 6:30. Here it is 1 o'clock my time. I'm fasted. I won't eat my first meal until after the show today, and I will go to the gym and train later. I do that because of the anti-aging benefits of it.
And then of course the opposite is, largely within the muscle field, it's long been believed that the mTOR is the good guy. We've always seen mTOR as the good guy. Everything that activates mTOR is going to lead to muscle growth, and that's a great thing. And I came from the muscle field originally, and originally thought that this is really the case. You activate mTOR, activate protein synthesis, you're going to grow your muscles, and to some, and in some regards that's true. I think you do still need an activation of mTOR, an activation of protein synthesis during these growth phases, right? But then, what we kind of wanted in the end, and it's been a thought in the muscle field for quite some time, that if you use rapamycin to extend your lifespan, this is going to come at the cost of muscles, right? You can't have your muscle and live longer too. It's that old adage. And
right. And I believed that. In fact, I personally followed Dr. Blagascloni's introductory protocol. And today is Wednesday. Every Wednesday, I take 6 milligrams of rapamycin to reduce senescent cells and all the benefits that rapamycin has been shown to have pleiotropic effects that have nothing to do with aging, that have to do with enhancing immune function and so on. And so I take 6 milligrams. But when I take 6 milligrams on a Wednesday, I generally feel like my trip to the gym is wasted because I'm not going to see that muscle creation for the next couple of days. But your research has given me new hope. I'm like, oh my God, this may not be the case.
Well, I'm not sure in regards to muscle gain. So, the critical thing here is that these mice were not being trained, or they were not undergoing some kind of resistance training program. We really just sought to answer the question of if we just constantly suppress mTOR with rapamycin. So we gave them quite a decent dose of rapamycin in their food. So they essentially had high levels when they were eating overnight, and they should have still had high levels by the time they were ready to start eating again.
Well, doesn't rapamycin have a 36-hour half-life, or am I mistaken?
Yeah, I think it's something like this. So, they still had signs of mTOR suppression when we collected this tissue, the next day before they started their eating phase again. There should have been mTOR suppression the whole way through, I guess, throughout the day.
Sure.
And so I guess, what we were surprised to see was that this didn't lead to muscle loss. It didn't also, it's an important point that it also didn't lead to muscle gain, and we're not sure what would happen
wait a minute.
Trying to gain muscle.
They were sedentary, right?
They were sedentary mice, exactly.
I personally, again, I'm not a scientist. I extrapolate from your research that if sedentary rodents, or maybe people who aren't doing anything to promote muscle gains, they're halted from the natural progression of muscle loss from being sedentary by rapamycin, then I think that it may not help muscle gains, but it definitely isn't going to inhibit muscle gains. That's my takeaway.
Well, this is, I guess, not proven yet. So we didn't test. These studies end up taking quite a long time to do, and we really just tried to focus on whether it would increase losses or whether it could perhaps attenuate losses of mass across a long period of time during aging. And so we clearly saw in the control group that they lost muscle mass, they lost muscle function, in a variety of tests. So we tried to really test for things that you also use to test for sarcopenia in humans or muscle aging. So we use things like grip strength and their ability to just to run in a treadmill, in a running wheel. We looked at their metabolism, things like this. And so in all cases in the control group, over the span of our treatment period, all the control groups sort of lost mass, lost function, showed signs of deteriorating metabolism. And over this same period, when we started treating with rapamycin, there was no immediate boost, I guess, in function or in muscle mass, but rather it prevented this loss. I think it will be still interesting to test, whether with long-term rapamycin treatment, whether this would interact with exercise programs. And resistance exercise is still the gold standard for trying to avoid sarcopenia, and so obviously it'll be key to try and work that out.
Also dietary approaches too. We know that as we age, seniors tend to shy away from protein. They have a harder time digesting it. Maybe they have problems with teeth, and animal protein becomes arduous to even consume. And the drop in protein consumption also contributes to sarcopenia. We actually talked about a study that was published maybe 6 years ago that looked at the dwindling proteins consumption by elderly people and whether it was contributing to muscle loss. So, it's also interesting that protein synthetic response from high leucine protein is an important factor in sarcopenia as well. Would you agree with that?
Well, I mean, this I'm not actually sure about. I agree that in elderly populations, it seems like some of them aren't getting enough protein, and I think there's really a difference here between not getting enough of something and whether supplemental levels of that have additional benefits. And actually one of the reasons I got into this area of research was during my PhD I was interested in amino acids and their effect on mTOR, and this was in the days that mTOR was great in muscle. And leucine, of course, is really, mTOR is very sensitive to leucine levels, and so it's a great one to activate mTOR more and boost protein synthesis more. And during my PhD, essentially when I started writing this review, thinking leucine is going to be good, and maybe this is a good intervention to prevent sarcopenia or other forms of muscle atrophy. And when we closely looked at the literature, this doesn't seem to pan out. So I think it's, if you take things like leucine and amino acids just after an exercise bout or just before or just during, this for sure can boost your muscle gains. But just taking it alone does not seem to be sufficient to cause an increase in muscle size or even to prevent muscle loss. So
I have a question for you. So from your research back then, did a bolus of high leucine protein turn mTOR on, but not turn protein synthesis on? That's what I'm curious about.
Not necessarily. So in some wasting conditions, yes, this is what can happen. You can get activation without protein synthesis, but in most cases, you would still get an increase in protein synthesis. It's just that this doesn't end up leading to muscle growth. And muscle growth, if you want to measure muscle growth, you should measure muscle growth, not protein synthesis, right? And you can't necessarily correlate one with the other always. It's not it makes complete sense that if you were, wanting to grow your muscles, you would need to make more proteins, but it just doesn't always, come out like this.
No, that you're right, because the muscle growth is the net effect of both stimulus and deterioration at the same time. So you're right. You're absolutely right. So the rodents were given rapamycin from what age on that would compare to human age, for instance? Like, were they given rapamycin at the age of 60 on or 80 on, or did they start earlier?
So with the mice, they were either we took two groups, one at 15 months and one at 20 months, and this would be around 50 to 60 years of age. Okay. And so we first characterized sort of the progression of sarcopenia in mice, and so we were able to track it to between 20 months and about 28 months. This is when you go from not losing muscle mass to a level which would be consistent with sarcopenia in humans. So that's why we picked this treatment period, and started treating just before we see signs of muscle loss, and stopped when we knew we could detect significant losses of muscle mass.
Now, there are lots of different forms of mTOR, right? The C1 is just one form, right?
Right.
So do we know anything about all the different forms of mTOR and how they are all affected by rapamycin use?
So the main ones are there's this mTOR complex 1 and there's mTOR complex 2, and then they still both contain the protein mTOR, but they contain other proteins as part of this complex that sort of alter the function of it. And so, mTOR is the one that people know the most about. And this one is more of a, is directly inhibited by rapamycin, is quite sensitive to it. I want to also say that it's not a complete inhibitor of mTOR. So, need to be careful about that. It's only a partial inhibitor, so it only inhibits certain targets of mTOR. There's good targets and there's bad targets, and some targets can still be activated even with rapamycin. So that's the main
what
one.
we're talking about here is a selective mTOR receptor agonist, if you will. It's not affecting all of mTOR's targets. That's interesting.
That's right. So rapamycin is binding with another protein, and then they basically attach to the mTOR1 complex and sort of partially inhibit the site where mTOR would bind with other proteins and phosphorylate them or activate them or inhibit them. And so some of these target proteins can still get around this rapamycin, other protein complex, and still get activated, whereas some can't. So sometimes it's referred to even as rapamycin sensitive mTOR, just because it's not the complete mTOR1 that's inhibited. So there's the other one. The other complex is mTOR complex 2. And so less is known about it, and it can also be inhibited by rapamycin, particularly by prolonged rapamycin treatment, although it's much less sensitive than mTOR1. But again, this is really tissue sensitive. So whether rapamycin will inhibit mTOR2 or not depends on the levels of certain proteins that will bind to rapamycin and take it to the mTOR complex. So it really depends on the tissue as to whether mTOR2 will be inhibited as well as mTOR1 and so forth.
So the other thing that I gathered from your study, which was kind of really counterintuitive, was that mTOR-C1 may contribute to sarcopenia in some way. That was shocking to me because we all think, as you said before, when you were in the whole amino acid area, turn mTOR on, muscle grow. But it looks like mTOR-C1 turned on too long, too often, can actually contribute to suppression or muscle wasting. Talk about that.
Right. So, in this case, we talk about, and we found in the old muscles, I guess, that mTOR was more active than in the young muscles. But importantly, this wasn't immediately after feeding. So, mTOR would be, you would expect it goes up and down during the day. So it will go up after a meal, especially if there's a good amount of protein in there. And then when you stop eating, particularly if you're fasting for a little bit longer or overnight, then mTOR should turn off. And turning it off then allows other processes to occur, such as autophagy, and you'll get damaged organelles, damaged proteins can get cleared away, and then you start fresh, and then the next day you get a new meal, new proteins will be made, so forth. And so we looked at these mice deliberately in the afternoon when they should. So mice are nocturnal, so their day is nighttime. So we looked at them in essentially their resting period, the equivalent of our night. And so there in the young mice, mTOR was basically turned off, as it should be. But in these old mice, it was still active. And when we used stainings to look at where it was active, because like you said, we usually associate mTOR activity with bigger muscles, we could see that it wasn't just spread out around the whole muscle section. There was very specific fibers that had high levels of downstream mTOR targets. So high mTOR activity in very specific fibers. And the properties of these muscle fibers were actually, they were smaller than the rest. So they were atrophic. They were getting smaller. So in this case, you can't be sure whether mTOR is really, contributing to this. Is mTOR driving the muscle wasting of these fibers, or is it being activated by
rescue them? It may have been trying to rescue them from
right. Yeah, exactly. So it could be trying to rescue them. It could also just be tricked into being activated. So, as you mentioned, leucine activates mTOR. Even if you just take leucine in high enough doses, it will activate mTOR. And so if you've got a fiber that's breaking down, right, you've got the proteins in the muscle fiber, they're being broken down into amino acids. This can then activate mTOR. So potentially when it shouldn't be activated.
Was it like a fast twitch, slow twitch fibers that seemed to be the most often recognized as the ones that were atrophying and calling for mTOR?
So, I mean, so in the muscle we looked at, there were the muscle is a mostly fast muscle, so the mouse is quite a bit faster than a human in terms of muscle fibers. So we didn't specifically stain for them, but because they were spread all over the muscle fiber. So, I mean, we suspect that there were a range of different muscle fiber types, but yeah, we would have to check, directly whether. So yeah, on this picture that you can see already.
On the left, we have a young mouse. The middle is an adult mouse, and then the right one is an adult mouse that's been taking rapamycin. What do we see here?
Yeah, so these are stained for different myosin heavy chains, which link to the different properties of the muscle fibers. So in red, we've stained for the very fast fibers. In mouse, this is a type 2B. In green, we've stained for the slowest type of 2 fibers, which is 2A, and then in black, they're 2X fibers. So we've also stained for type 1 fibers, but in this muscle in the mouse, there's virtually no type 1 fibers there. So they're all type 2 fibers, but there's the green ones are the slowest, and they're closest to the bone there. There's 2X in black, and then red 2B, the fastest type.
And so what do we see in the young, the old, and the old supplemented with rapamycin? Is it the fact that we have the more of the green that shows there's less muscle wasting? What does this show?
Right. Yeah. So I mean, this ends up getting very complicated to interpret, but basically, I mean, when we go from young to old, that's the biggest change, and we see overall a small loss of muscle fibers. So you can lose the individual fibers, and this is most likely from losing a motor neuron that's innervating a group of fibers, and then you can lose fibers in this process. But when this happens, you don't necessarily lose all of the fibers in this group of this motor unit because some of the neighboring axons related to other motor units can then reattach to these muscle fibers and then join them up with their motor unit. So some motor units, you essentially get less motor units, but they get bigger. And this is a muscle from the tibialis anterior, so the front of the lower leg. And it's believed to be relatively good at this reinnervation process, so can capture a lot of the fibers that it would otherwise lose. But so what we see in this aged mouse is they lose a few fibers, but the actual fibers themselves get quite a bit smaller, and that particularly happens in the fastest of the fibers. So the 2B fibers show the most dramatic atrophy. And so then
I'm sorry, go ahead. No, go.
So then when we looked at the rapamycin mouse, what we saw was that in particular, the 2A and the 2X fibers seem to be bigger. And we also saw a bit of a switch towards having more 2A fibers. And what you might be able to see there, these green fibers, is that in the control mouse, these little green fibers are quite spread out. There's not too many of them clumped together. Whereas if you look at the rapamycin treated one, there seems to be some quite clumps of these green fibers. And so what we think this is that there's been a loss of a motor unit, and then the fibers have been picked up.
Almost a consolidation, yeah.
Yeah, right. So there's been a loss of one motor unit, and then these fibers have been picked up by neighboring ones, and then they become the same as the rest of the fibers in that motor unit. So you get these clumps of fibers.
So I want to talk about innervation for a second, right? So one of the things that people take rapamycin, that I take rapamycin for, and twice a year I actually take a 5-day round of amoxicillin, is the reduction of senescent cells. We understand that these senescent cells produce inflammatory cytokines that make everything around them sick, and slowly senescence is attributed to the cells around it, and senescent cells grow in abundance, blah, blah, blah. So is the reduction of senescent cells possibly playing a role in the preservation of muscle? And if so, is it through, does it reduce the impairment, or does it reduce the impairment of the innervation to these muscle fibers?
So I mean, we didn't check directly for senescent cells in the muscle. I mean, there's there's not usually strong numbers of senescent cells in muscle themselves, but it's very possible that, I mean, we did see reductions in inflammation, consistent with a reduction in the secretory phenotype from senescent cells. So, it's very likely that this was improving or reducing the number of senescent cells in other tissues, which could have then led to an effect on the muscle. So, I mean, there's lots of secondary, there's whole body effects there.
Well, we know from research done on elderly people who have taken NSAIDs. So as you age, and we couldn't get into all the mechanisms, but as you age, whole scale inflammation goes up.
Right.
And as the body becomes on fire, so to speak, the workout that you just did gets less attention to repair and recover and see a greater protein synthetic response. So anything that reduces whole scale inflammation in the body makes workouts more productive. So it could very well be that also suppresses the cannibalism of or anabolism. Cannibalism of catabolic effect, and so it preserves muscle. Could it be that simple? Could it just be inflammation here?
So we definitely think that this is one aspect of it. Yeah. So we did see systemically lower levels of cytokines. So that's not in the paper, but we've looked at it separately. And within the muscle, the immune response within the muscle was clearly a strongly associated with age, and then it was also reduced by rapamycin largely. So, I mean, for sure, I think inflammation contributes there, and the anti-inflammatory effect of rapamycin most likely also had a positive effect there. But I want to go back to the nerves you mentioned before.
Yes, please.
And I think that this one ends up being, a really tricky one because, for sure, these are probably also infected by inflammation, and at some stage, during the normal aging process, you start to lose these motor neurons, and then the muscle can cope with this partially by this reinnervating, but then eventually it struggles to cope with this. And actually, one of the really interesting things we found here was that it depended on the muscle as to whether rapamycin was effective. So it was effective in the tibialis anterior, for example. This is the muscle you see here on the picture. But in the gastroc on the back of the leg, it was not at all effective, right? So no change in muscle mass. And so we were we were puzzled about this. Why would rapamycin be effective in one muscle and not another? And largely, muscles are often thought of as essentially acting the same way, being largely the same, except for maybe fast, slow properties. But both of these muscles are fast, and they both age, that's for sure. And so we were quite puzzled by this. We first looked at mTOR signaling. Maybe mTOR signaling is different between these two, and that wasn't the case. They both increased with age and decreased with rapamycin. So that wasn't it. And then what we decided to do was extract RNA from these muscles along with a couple of others, sequence it, and then try to look for signals that might, differentiate these muscles. And kind of our first hypothesis was, well, maybe muscles age differently. And, this would be, a fascinating way to try and understand the different mechanisms that, that control aging in different muscles. Maybe different muscles need different interventions, to be able to slow aging. But what we basically found was that all the muscles express different levels of genes to start with. I mean, they all perform different functions and they need to express different genes. But in fact, the response to aging was really very similar. This was whether it was a slow twitch muscle or a fast twitch muscle, a forelimb muscle, hind limb, whatever, it was all relatively the same. And it only came when we started to look at the response to rapamycin where we started to see a difference. And while in the TA, there was basically only beneficial effects of rapamycin. We had this sort of anti-aging signature where genes were changed, they either went up or they went down, and they were reversed by rapamycin. And this happened for not all of the aging changes, but a lot of them. Whereas when then we looked at the gastroc, we saw both pro and anti-aging effects. So, there was still positive effects of rapamycin for sure, but there was also other genes that were increased with age or decreased with age, and then further decreased or further increased with rapamycin. And so, it suggests that it really depends on the balance between the positive effects of rapamycin and perhaps side effects of rapamycin as to, whether the muscle will be beneficially affected or not. And I mean, to cut a long story short.
Did the gastroc actually reduce in size with age, or did it kind of take care of itself?
No, so in fact, it was the other way around. So the TA aged one of the least. So it dropped about 12% between adult and very old. So the very old mouse here is about 80 years of age, whereas the gastroc dropped almost double that amount. So it's quite sensitive. So what we think is the TA is actually able to cope with this negative effect of rapamycin, and where we've kind of traced these side effects back, and what we think that they are is negative effects on the nerves actually, or the axons, where we have to test this in a bit more detail, but it looks like these side effects could be related to the motor neurons, the axons, or the nerves.
I want to take a quick commercial break. I've got a question about blood flow when we come back. I want to understand if you looked at blood flow as well as the nerve density, because we know now that a lot of neuropathologies that affect motor skills start with reduction in blood flow to the nerve that causes the nerve to stop doing its job. We're going to take a quick commercial break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more Superhuman Radio.
When craving a snack, reach for Select Savory Snack Sugar-Free Biltong, the healthy alternative to sugar-laden beef jerky. They use a fattier cut of beef, making it more tender and flavorful. For mealtime, choose from their 63 seasonings, which are sugar and additive-free. From chipotle rub to savory pumpkin spice, you'll find an option to suit your palate. Go to shrnetwork.biz/SSS today. Use code SHR15 to save 15% on any meat snack or seasoning. Savor the flavor today.
Whether your goal is to build muscle or burn fat, you'll find everything you need at Redcon One. Need help getting a good night's sleep? Try Fade Out, or the most popular pre-workout supplement on the market today, Total War. Sign up for their new Transformation Challenge and win $10,000, or shop for apparel that people at the gym will know that you are serious about your training. Need a testosterone booster that works? Check out Boomstick. Whatever you need, you'll find the best quality supplements on the market at Redcon One. Go to redcon1.com. That's REDCON1.com, or go to superhumanradio.net and click the Redcon One banner ad today. Are you still on the fence about Body Protection Complex BPC Oral from drseeds.com? Listen to Maggie Kuhn, one of the owners of the C-Bus Lifting Company gym in Columbus, Ohio.
I had been having some nagging tendon issues that weren't injuries, just things that were annoying. I'm 58 years old, so just older tendon kind of issues. For us powerlifters, we really don't stop training when we have just nagging issues. We just kind of keep pushing through. And I started the BPC. What I noticed was I was doing some heavy tricep stuff that would have killed me before when I had an elbow problem, and I was able to do this with literally no pain at all.
Go to drseeds.com, drseeds.com. Use coupon code SHR and save 20% off your bottle of BPC Body Protection Complex today. You've heard me talk about the chill pill on the show and how effective it is at helping people who suffer from social anxiety, or sometimes when you just want to take the edge off to a long, stressful day. Well, listen to this story from Dylan Goutreau.
Definitely takes anxiety away, which I have a long history of having. Started out at 2 milligrams a day of Xanax. That was at 8 years old. And so I stopped using benzos 3 years ago. Extremely difficult. Yeah, so I spent about 3 years trying to find anything and everything I could that would be healthy for me to help with anxiety. Because I'm talking, full out panic attack. The chill pill was the first thing that I found that actually in the middle of a panic attack I can take, and it definitely subsides.
Go to drseeds.com. That's drseeds.com. Use coupon code SHR and save 20% off your first bottle of the chill pill. Check it out. I promise this is one supplement that delivers
Want to improve mental energy and focus? Try the new Superhuman Stack from Pure Nootropics. Stack Dynamine, Salbutamine, Theocrine, and palmitoyl ethanolamide together and feel the lights go on in your brain. Find your perfect mix of these four. Carl likes 1 cap of each and 2 caps of Dynamine. Bam! Lights on. Go to shrnetwork.biz/superhumanstack, all one word, today, and get yours for 25% off plus free shipping. That's shrnetwork.biz/superhumanstack.
Quest Nutrition makes bars, cookies, chips, and pizzas out of complete dairy-based proteins. Our products minimize net carbs and sugar without sacrificing taste. Each delicious chocolate-flavored chip, cookie chunk, and crunchy crumble is custom-made to maintain Quest macros. It's time to enjoy foods that work for you, not against you. It's time to enjoy your Quest.
This is the Superhuman Channel, doing reps with the weight of the world.
Welcome back. We're talking with Dr. Daniel Ham. We're talking about rapamycin and muscle. Very, very interesting discussion because we're just learning about it now. In fact, I asked Dr. Blagascloni once if I take my 6 milligrams on Wednesday, but I have 350 grams of high leucine protein throughout the day across 5 or 6 meals, isn't there a negative effect on turning mTOR off? And he said no one's looked at that. No one's looked at consuming high protein in the face of taking rapamycin, but that's a different discussion. So let's talk about blood flow. Did you look at blood flow at all and its relationship to supplementation in the elderly rodents?
No, in this case, unfortunately, we never looked at blood flow or, I mean, so I wouldn't be able to speculate on, what potential effects.
Trying to find the pathway of action, it seems fascinating to me. So, there was a study published that we talked about on the show last year that showed that a single bout of intense resistance training reduced senescent cell accumulation in muscle by 42%, which was significant. That's a significant reduction. And this was in middle-aged individuals, and they were smart enough to do 2 groups, a low protein and a high protein consumption group. So we could say, even because it happened in the high protein consuming group, saw the same 42% reduction. So we know that turning mTOR on with protein doesn't seem to negatively affect the ability for about a resistance training to reduce senescent cells, which was positive because that was the first time I thought, maybe mTOR isn't the problem. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. Well, I mean, I think we end up mixing two things here. I mean, exercise does activate mTOR, but it also activates autophagy. And I think the danger gets here is if you're activating mTOR independently, perhaps through amino acid supplementation without the exercise, this is where you may have a further impact on senescence. It's hard to say, but independently, when you exercise, you already turn on autophagy, and that's, I think, probably one of the the big beneficial effects of exercise regarding health anyway.
So one of our viewers on YouTube, Faith Fitness Guy, says, does the negative nerve reaction occur in younger than 80-year-old range? This is a good question. We're looking at elderly rodents here. Do we think that we would see the same thing in younger rodents?
So I doubt very much that it's having a negative effect directly on the nerves. I mean, what we think is that it might be, and again, this requires some additional studies to really show this clearly. But what we think is during the normal span of aging, if you're losing motor neurons, or you're having nerve damage, then you need to be able to repair this, or you need to be able to capture these lost fibers. And if you're impairing the ability of the nerve to remyelinate itself, so or the cells around it to do this, then it may in the end affect the nerve if it's already being damaged. So I don't know regarding whether this would affect young people as well, but I suspect it would be rather a case of if there's damage going on, it may impair the ability to repair this damage, and you end up getting worse in the nerves. So, again, mTOR is not always good. It's not always bad, and it really depends on the tissue as to what role it plays, and even the cell type. And so within the nerves, mTOR can be too active sometimes, and then bringing it down is helpful. But it can also be if you block it when it needs to be activated, then you can also cause problems. So it gets very tricky in the end to try and combine all these different possible effects of a blanket suppressing of mTOR across tissues, and you really have to view each of these things as individual questions, whether it's during aging or during another pathology or in young people. Having said that, I'm not sure that it would be recommended to take rapamycin as a young person, anyway. And so
you don't need it. You don't need it. An interesting discussion we had with Dr. Blagascloni when he was on the show last time was his conclusion is that rapamycin was an onco drug, a chemo drug. I'm sorry, because it reversed tissue aging, and he said old people get cancer, young people don't get cancer. Young people have fewer senescent cells. Old people have lots more senescent cells. Rapamycin didn't directly inhibit cancer, but by making tissue younger, you were less likely to be able to have cancer. And I keep coming back to the anti-inflammatory effects. Dr. Matt Andrew, who's my personal physician, and I have talked. He's the one who prescribes a Z-Pak for me twice a year. The FDA has approved azithromycin to be used for anti-aging because it literally in 5 days reduces all the senescent cells in your body by 97%. This has been shown in research. And we were talking about this one day, and he said that he prescribes azithromycin for people who have extreme inflammatory disorders. He said it's amazing at reducing inflammation. And if we look back at what senescent cells do, they basically turn the body on fire. If you have a lot of senescent cells, you got a ton of inflammation. It's producing all these inflammatory cytokines and chemokines and all this other stuff that's just screwing up everything around it. And so, and vasculature seems to constrict when there's a lot of inflammation. We see this in neuropathies, for instance. So neuropathies, now we know, start out by inflammation, which we know that type 2 diabetes is usually one of the implications is chronic inflammation. Inflammation starves the nerve, and the nerve starts to die. And so you have hyperalgesia or one of these conditions that is associated with the onset of neuropathy. And so it could very well be that the reason that rapamycin works, as you pointed out in this study, is because of the collateral effects of whole-scale reduction in inflammation and all of the cascading effect of what that does to nerves, blood flow, and possibly even catabolism. Maybe one of the reasons that we have a harder time building muscle when we're older is because we're so hyper-inflamed all the time. What do you think?
Yeah, sure. I think anything that can reduce the amount of senescent cells, and particularly if you're not having to take this constantly, but every now and then to reduce the burden. I mean, obviously, a cell becoming senescent is not it's a bad thing that they're accumulating, but it's not necessarily a bad thing that it happens. It's it's there for a reason. Like most things, it's there to protect against this cell eventually becoming cancerous.
Right.
And so in this case, it seems like
cancer cells turn off, cell death, and senescent cells also turn off cell death. So
right, but then they become non-proliferative, which is what you would want. You would rather that version than the cancerous version.
yeah, yes.
But I completely agree that getting rid of these cells periodically makes perfect sense, and the research supports this, I guess, at this stage. Yeah, I mean, with regards to rapamycin, so we for sure think some of the whole body effects, and potentially reducing senescent cells might be one of those. Could be having beneficial effects on the muscle. But I want to also say that we know that there is also direct effects within the muscle. So if you activate mTOR constantly within the muscle, rather than leading to muscle hypertrophy, this actually causes muscle atrophy eventually. So it's not just a case of you're suppressing inflammation systemically, and then this is having beneficial effects. We think that there's real damaging effects of mTOR being activated within the muscle, and suppressing this probably also has beneficial effects.
So let's talk about this pulsatility that the body seems to like in all areas. We talked about it before the show, you and I. Mm-hmm. Dr. Don Lehman's lab up in University of Illinois had done some fantastic studies back in 2007, 2008 that showed, they will look, his interest is more the protein synthetic response of dietary protein. And they discovered, and they used a wide variety of proteins, soy protein and beef protein and whey protein and egg protein were king, because they have lots of leucine. They're very, very bioavailable. But his lab did a study that showed that consuming protein any more often than every 2 or 2.5 hours reduced the protein synthetic signaling, which speaks to turning mTOR on all the time, and all of a sudden things don't happen. So the body likes mTOR to turn on, and then it likes mTOR to turn off, and the other things, autophagy, and because when there's autophagy, but there's baseline autophagy. This is autophagy that's going on all the time, whether you're eating or not. And the amplitude between baseline autophagy and a peak autophagy event is critical to the efficiency of autophagy, but more importantly, is critical to the protein synthetic response. People who don't have a very, very good baseline of autophagy and then a high stimulant of autophagy don't see the same protein synthesis. We did an interview probably 7-8 years ago that showed that protein synthesis is dependent, its efficiency is dependent on cycling off mTOR and turning on autophagy. So the body doesn't want the foot on the gas all the time or the foot on the brake all the time. The body responds, and that's why it's so misguided. I have a friend that 15 years ago said, no, not 15, 7 years ago, said, I'm stopping. I'm not going to eat red meat anymore. I'm not going to drink dairy. I'm avoiding anything that stimulates IGF-1. I'm going to anything that stimulates mTOR, because he thought he was going to live forever. He's not doing well now. He's just not. And so this is idiocy to think that, just turn mTOR off all the time and we're going to be great, or just turn mTOR on all the time and we're going to be super muscular. It doesn't work that way. Speak to that.
Yeah, you're exactly right there. I mean, mTOR is for sure an important protein, and it controls really a lot of things. So it senses whether the conditions are right to grow, or the conditions are right to rejuvenate or recover. And it does this by the levels of amino acids that are available, the levels of energy available, and the level of growth factors. And so when it becomes active, it'll make new proteins, and it should only do this when the conditions are right to do this. And then it's also important that it then switches off, just like it's important that we sleep. It's important that mTOR takes a break, lets these other processes become activated and clear away the junk. Otherwise, you can keep making proteins, but you end up making more and more junk. And if you build up more and more junk, and this is also one of the theories of aging, is that you build too many misfolded proteins, and you accumulate junk essentially. And that's why autophagy works really well. And that's one of the reasons as well why things that reduce protein synthesis or mTOR signaling can also be beneficial, because you reduce the junk load essentially. And so it's important that really important that it stays in balance there. But I want to also say, mTOR is still important within the muscle to be activated during growth situations. So, for example, if you and we've done this in the lab, if you knock it out in muscle in a developing mouse, then this leads to very poor muscle quality, and the mouse eventually dies at 5 or 6 months old.
Interesting.
Too little mTOR is for sure bad, and particularly during important events where it's needed to be activated, and then too much as well. Like you said, foot on the gas all the time. This leaves you no chance to rejuvenate or recover, and this also causes problems.
I want to take our last commercial break. When we come back, I want to talk about two things: what you feel that clinicians and lay people take away from your work, but more importantly, you've devised a way to measure this kind of stuff, right? Didn't you guys create like this whole that other labs can use to evaluate? Let's talk about that when we come back from the break, okay?
Okay.
All right. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more. Everybody wants to feel better, be healthier and happier. If you don't sweat profusely on a regular basis, you won't feel as good as you could. Studies have shown the power of infrared sauna. Infrared penetrates 1 to 2 inches into the body. It helps those with back pain, fibromyalgia, arthritis, depression, and anxiety. Patients get relief from infrared sauna. The Good Health Sauna has been shown to be an exercise mimetic, conveying many of the same benefits as cardio. There are a lot of reasons people buy a Good Health Sauna, but the bottom line is you will be a much happier, healthier person by using the Good Health Sauna every day. You'll crave it, you'll love it, and it will be the best purchase you have ever made. Good Health Saunas provide commercial-grade saunas for in-home and commercial use, backed by the best lifetime warranty in the industry. Unmatched customer service and the best financing makes owning one easy and will fit any budget. Go to goodhealthsauna.com/superhumanradio to learn more and save 25% off. I love beef, and if you love beef, listen up. I've discovered the best tasting beef in the world, and that's not an exaggeration, at Piedmontese.com. The Piedmontese breed is famous from Italy for being lean and unbelievably tender, with half the fat and calories of traditional beef. Even typically tough cuts are tender when it comes from the Piedmontese cows. And for the first time ever, Piedmontese cows are being raised here in the USA. Get 25% off all beef and free shipping on orders of $100 or more at Piedmontese.com with code SHR. Go to Piedmontese.com and use code SHR today. You will never eat any other type of beef ever again. Chronic stress leaves us tired, distracted, and physically vulnerable. Apollo Neuro is here to help you take control. Apollo Neuro is a new wearable that trains your nervous system to be more resilient to stress. Apollo's gentle vibrations use your sense of touch to help you recover from stress, going from fight or flight to rest and digest, so you can relax, get to sleep, focus, and stay healthy. Developed by physicians and neuroscientists, Apollo Neuro has been tested in multiple clinical trials and is proven to improve heart rate variability, the key biometric of stress. Special offer for friends of Superhuman Radio. Try Apollo Neuro today and get 15% off your purchase at apolloneuro.com/superhuman. That's APOLLONEURO.com/superhuman.
New Mass Pro Synthogen X2 just upped its own legendary game. To distance itself even further from the rest of the pack, Synthogen X2 now has double the key active ingredients. If you've ever wondered what steroid-like recovery feels like, Synthogen X2 delivers. See why others compare it favorably to powerful bodybuilding drugs at synthogen.com. Mass Pro Synthogen. When you train with it, you'll gain with it.
Do you remember those delicious toaster pastries you had when you were a kid? You know, the rectangular sugar-filled snacks? Well, guess what? Legendary Foods has just made low-carb toaster pastry. This is the first of its kind, and honestly, these things are amazing. They have 3 to 4 net carb, less than 1 gram of sugar, and 9 grams of protein. You can eat them right out of the wrapper or lightly toast them. The only question is, which flavor, strawberry or brown sugar cinnamon? They're available at eatlegendary.com and Amazon. Did you know that your gut is referred to as your second brain? In fact, at least 90% of your serotonin, your happiness chemical, is created in your gut. If you don't take care of your gut, you won't feel good, period. Bioptimizers recently released Cognibiotics, a new breakthrough probiotic formula that is clinically proven to enhance your brain function, your mood, and overall mental health. Most probiotics often include conflicting strains or quantities and can cancel each other out. Cognibiotics delivers the exact strain you need in exactly the right ratios and quantities. With a 365-day, no questions asked, money-back guarantee, you can try them out for yourself to start feeling the incredible difference Cognibiotics makes in your mood, mind, and performance. For an exclusive offer to my listeners, go to cognibiotics.com/SHR. That's COGNIBIOTICS.com/SHR and use code SHR10.
This is the Superhuman Channel. Evolution just got kicked up a notch.
Welcome back to Superhuman Radio. So before we talk about what you hope clinicians and lay people take away from this, talk about this way of measuring gene expression and skeletal muscle that people can use to evaluate aging. This is something that all labs have access to, right? It's a web app.
Right. Yeah, everyone has access to this. Even if you want to look up your favorite gene, you can look it up. So I mean, this was something we really wanted. I mean, we find this area of research interesting, and we're quite invested in trying to understand better, what's causing sarcopenia within the muscle, what's the signaling events that are leading to this, and so we can try and better understand what treatments might be effective against it. And so what we wanted to do was, I guess, give as many people access to the data that we've created in a really easy to use manner. So you could do your own tests, you can do your own analysis of this data, within this web app. And so this was created by our collaborators who played a really large role in the paper and to cope with all these large data sets. So this app was created by Anastasia Bush. She's a co-first author on the paper, and so this was her focus developing this. And so, yeah, what we really wanted to do was to show people easily how the genes were changing with age in this, what we consider to be a well-documented, well-characterized study. And so they could see how genes might be affected by age, but also then by rapamycin. And we're slowly adding to this over time. So we have other ongoing studies where we're going to continue to bring new data sets into this. Calorie restriction is another one we'd like to include there. And yeah, we hope that it will help advance. So
is there a URL that people can go to, the average person can go to and see this?
Yeah, it's called Sarco Atlas.
I'm going to type it.
So it's Sarco Atlas. Yeah.
Sarco Atlas.
Yeah. .scicore, SCICORE.
Okay, hold on. Say it again.
So it's sarcoatlas.scicore, which is
not Sarco Atlas. ATLAS.SICOR.
SCICORE. Yep. .unibas.ch.
Will you email it to me after the show?
Yeah, so sure, no problems.
I'll post it in the final show because I don't want to get it wrong and then people go.
No problems. No problems at all.
But yeah, if you'll email that to me, I'll let people know about it. What do you hope this research does for clinicians and lay people, pointing at this aspect of rapamycin? Do you have any hopes for it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at this stage, what we think it does is is pave the way for human studies. And yeah, I mean, with these kind of things, the proof is in the pudding, and we've tested this in mice, and it seems like overall it's quite beneficial. There might be ways that we can overcome some of these side effects as well. But I think that the time is right to start a trial in humans, and then the problem would be of how to do this study. And for me, this study would need to be really long term to be conclusive, because We're not sure yet whether rapamycin would be, rejuvenative, whether you could take it already being sarcopenic and you might get improvements, or whether you would need to, take it over a really long period of time, in which you see in a control group significant muscle aging. So we're trying to answer this question as well in mice of whether we can get, benefits in very, very old mice. Yeah,
a lot of people.
I think the time is right to test.
A lot of people in my audience want to be subjects in the test.
Okay, great.
There you go. So you know where to get humans if you want them.
Fantastic.
Yeah, this is fascinating stuff. Like I said, I actually didn't use rapamycin for a very long time because of my fear that it would inhibit muscle. And the truth is that I seem to put on muscle fairly easy. And since I've been back on my protocol, which is just a couple months now. I'm taking 6 milligrams every Wednesday for me. And I don't seem to be losing anything in the gym either. So it just makes me feel better. Because I used to be filled with angst. I would take it and think, oh, great, now I'm going to go to the gym for nothing for the next couple of days. And obviously it's not for nothing because there's all sorts of benefits of physical exercise. But this is very promising. And I love that more and more people are looking at rapamycin and doing research on it. I mean, I really think that when some group starts to look at rapamycin as a better alternative to reduce chronic inflammation and reduce senescent cells. We just came out of COVID-19. I say we came out of it, too much behind us now. And I had a doctor from the UK on. He's originally from Brooklyn, Dr. Michael Lisanti. And he published a fantastic paper showing that senescent cells were the targets of the COVID virus. They took senescent cells hostage and turned them into replicating factories. This is why elderly people were so devastated by the virus and young people weren't. It was just the sheer volume of senescent cells that they could take advantage of. And he showed that using drugs like rapamycin, azithromycin, these drugs that focus on reduction of senescent cells, was the way to keep people from dying and even prevent people on the front lines from getting infected in the first place. And right around the time I had him on, the Diamond Princess, which was the cruise ship that had a lot of people who had COVID-19 on the ship, and there was a couple, a husband and wife. The husband was the recipient of kidney transplant, and he was taking sirolimus daily, which is rapamycin, and his wife was not. They both got infected. She had to stay on the ship for like a month. They sent him home. He had a mild fever for like one day, and he was fine. And now I understand this doesn't prove anything because science will say, well, this is an N=1. We don't know anything. But then when you look at all the research that Dr. Blagascloni has put out there, that Dr. Lisanti has put out there, showing that things that reduce senescent cells reduce both the likelihood of being infected and the mortality rate of being infected. And I mean, when you start looking at these drugs, I think Dr. Blagascloni is right. It's a very simplistic thing to say that if you reduce the biological age of tissue, you're less susceptible to age-related diseases. And I would lump into that sarcopenia. I would lump into that. So now, how is it working? I don't know. Is it really working? I don't know. But my God, it's really, I mean, I look at rapamycin. Individuals who take sirolimus for kidney rejection, they have far less occurrences of the seasonal flu, of various, it's thought that sirolimus and rapamycin reduce immune response, because that's what, well, if it causes anti-rejection, it must reduce. And now we know that's not. Dr. Blagascloni has done 2 good studies that show that these individuals on these drugs for long term are far less likely to get sick in the first place, which flies in the face of, they have reduced immune response. So rapamycin and these other rapalogs are very fascinating. And I think that you're right on the bleeding edge of what you're doing and moving forward, because I predict that a time will come that every person 45, 50 years or older will start taking a rapalog of some sort.
Yeah, I mean, you could be right. There certainly seems to be some clear advantages to it, and I think that that a couple of things need to be worked out. Of course, the dosing regime. I mean, we just constantly treat it, but intermittent seems to be the treatment protocol generally for humans. So, I mean, some of these things will have to be tested, and again, the point that you made earlier about it potentially, inhibiting strength gains, and I think that side of the puzzle, in my mind, would still need to be, thoroughly tested, and I'd be very interested to see whether, over a long-term training program, whether if you were taking rapamycin at the same time, whether this impacted, gains in muscle mass or.
I'm going to find out. I'm going to find out over the next year, because
let me know.
My goal is at 2021 to be in my best shape ever at 62 years old, 63. So we're going to see. We're going to see. And I'm using a lot of other things too, but we're going to see if it inhibits my ability to gain muscle. Listen, I want to thank you so much for being on. We have some other questions, but I'm going to let the good doctor go because these questions are tangential. So we'll address them. But thank you so much for being on the show today. And I hope that you will come back. Whoop, I don't want the music to run yet. Thank you. And I hope that you'll come back as new research becomes available.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Carl.
Take care. Okay, so before we go into a break, I'm going to go ahead and just pop some of these questions up. Okay, so metformin appears to only help people who have type 2 diabetes already. Dr. Blagascloni and I have had a conversation, and we talked about it on the last show, that he has stopped promoting metformin as a senolytic. He says it only helps people who are sick already, and that sickness being type 2 diabetes. Also, it should be understood that metformin changes the gut microbiome. And since we don't know a lot about gut microbiome right now, it is thought that those changes are not great. Okay? Again, rapamycin doesn't change the gut microbiome, but metformin does. Metformin works through the gut. So I would say that metformin is only a good idea if, in fact, you already have type 2 diabetes. A better alternative is intermittent fasting, calorie restriction, to start to get blood sugar levels under control instead of using something like a metformin, number one. Faith Fitness Guy says, thanks to Dr. Ham for your dedication and your research. Absolutely. Then we have a couple questions up here. Faith Fitness Guy also says that he's guilty of 2.5 hours getting at least 35 to 40 grams of protein. That's the perfect. Less than that is the problem. Less than that is the problem. Dr. Don Layman's results, while only looking at protein synthesis, does indicate, as we said earlier, protein synthesis is optimized when autophagy occurs as well. The fact that they saw the greatest protein synthetic response in muscle gains at a protein pulse of no more than 2.5 or no less than 2.5 hours. So 2.5, 3, 4, they're all good. But once you get below 2.5 hours, you don't see the valuable protein synthetic response from the meal, which tells us indirectly that autophagy is working. Because we know that if autophagy is not in its proper pulse, you're not going to see that protein synthetic response. As far as sleep, as long as you're not, this idea that people have to wake up at 2 a.m. to have a protein shake in the middle of the night, it's crazy. You are really setting yourself up for disorders and diseases, because if we know anything about diseases like Alzheimer's disease from shows that we've done in the past with Dr. Dale Bredesen and others, we know that Fragmented sleep almost always produces misfolded proteins that are seen consistently in the disorder of Alzheimer's disease. And if you're waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning to throw a protein shake down, you're shutting off autophagy. But more importantly, if your body's busy digesting food, you are not going to go through the normal rhythmicity of sleep cycles. Just because you lay still for 8 hours and keep your eyes closed doesn't mean you're sleeping. Sleep has specific architecture that having a meal in the middle of the night completely disrupts. So as long as you're getting your 7 to 9 hours of steady, good, restful sleep at night and not waking up to do something stupid like throw a protein shake down, and you're eating every 2.5 to 3 hours, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. All right. We're going to take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, I want to tell you why I am moving to only streaming the show live on YouTube. And more importantly, an article that I wrote all the way back in March about the role of vitamin D3 and sun in not only protecting you from getting COVID-19, but also protecting you from dying from it, way before anybody else talked about it. In March, it's on my website. You can check and see if I'm lying. Is now coming full circle and being recognized by many of the people, including Dr. Fauci, believe it or not. Even Dr. Fauci is talking about this now. This may be the strongest thing you can do to protect yourself from developing, what did I do? Developing COVID-19. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Do you remember those delicious toaster pastries you had when you were a kid? You know, the rectangular sugar-filled snacks? Well, guess what? Legendary Foods has just made low-carb toaster pastry. This is the first of its kind, and honestly, these things are amazing. They have 3 to 4 net carb, less than 1 gram of sugar, and 9 grams of protein. You can eat them right out of the wrapper or lightly toast them. The only question is, which flavor, strawberry or brown sugar cinnamon? They're available at eatlegendary.com and Amazon.
Mind Bullet is a kratom product derived from the coffee family to boost energy and creative juices. Mind Bullet comes in both pill and liquid form for the ultimate pre-workout supplement. When needing a little pick-me-up or to get through the morning fog, Mind Bullet will set your productive course fast. Go to shrnetwork.biz/mindbullet, all one word, today, and save 20%. No subscription required. That's shrnetwork.biz/mindbullet. Get yours today. Among the easiest and most popular ways to experience the life-altering benefits of hemp, Planet Earth CBD soft gels offer fast-acting effects as they release quickly. Made in a GMP-compliant, US FDA-registered facility, you can count on Planet Earth's safe soft gels. These soft gels provide temporary relief from pain and so much more. Manufactured with the calming combination of chamomile and melatonin, you got yourself a long-needed CBD solution. 25 milligrams of nano-emulsified hemp extract per serving with anti-inflammatory agency. Planet Earth's sleep-supporting soft gels will have you forgetting about today's worries for a better tomorrow. Unwind with Planet Earth CBD today.
Everybody wants to feel better, be healthier and happier. If you don't sweat profusely on a regular basis, you won't feel as good as you could. Studies have shown the power of infrared sauna. Infrared penetrates 1 to 2 inches into the body. It helps those with back pain, fibromyalgia, arthritis, depression, and anxiety. Patients get relief from infrared sauna. The Good Health Sauna has been shown to be an exercise mimetic, conveying many of the same benefits as cardio. There are a lot of reasons people buy a Good Health Sauna, but the bottom line is you will be a much happier, healthier person by using the Good Health Sauna every day. You'll crave it, you'll love it, and it will be the best purchase you have ever made. Good Health Saunas provide commercial-grade saunas for in-home and commercial use, backed by the best lifetime warranty in the industry. Unmatched customer service and the best financing makes owning one easy and will fit any budget. Go to goodhealthsauna.com/superhumanradio to learn more and save 25% off. Chronic stress leaves us tired, distracted, and physically vulnerable. Apollo Neuro is here to help you take control. Apollo Neuro is a new wearable that trains your nervous system to be more resilient to to stress. Apollo's gentle vibrations use your sense of touch to help you recover from stress, going from fight or flight to rest and digest so you can relax, get to sleep, focus, and stay healthy. Developed by physicians and neuroscientists, Apollo Neuro has been tested in multiple clinical trials and is proven to improve heart rate variability, the key biometric of stress. Special offer for friends of Superhuman Radio. Try Apollo Neuro today and get 15% off your purchase at apolloneuro.com/superhuman. That's APOLLONEURO.com/superhuman.
Quest Nutrition makes bars, cookies, chips, and pizzas out of complete dairy-based proteins. Our products minimize net carbs and sugar without sacrificing taste. Each delicious chocolate-flavored chip, cookie chunk, and crunchy crumble is custom-made to maintain Quest macros. It's time to enjoy foods that work for you, not against you. It's time to enjoy your Quest.
Spit that out right now. This is the Superhuman Channel.
Welcome back. I'll be real brief. I even have a little banner to put up here. Look at that. Live videos will only stream on YouTube. We're not promoting Facebook anymore for anything. If you didn't hear already, Facebook has blocked me from doing live streams because they accused me of making a post that I didn't make. If you make a post on Facebook that goes against the community rules, you usually get a message. It says, we remove this post because it goes against our rules. And if you've done it before, then they put you in timeout for 30 days. Well, they claim I made a post on September 11th that I did not. The post was something derogatory about Osama bin Laden. Could you imagine? Facebook said that making a derogatory comment about a terrorist was against their community rules. Now, I did not make this post. I didn't. I've never seen the post before. They sent me an image of it, and I'm like, I didn't post that. Then I thought, well, maybe somebody hacked my account and posted it. But that couldn't be, because I still would have got that message that said, hey, you broke our rules. We're removing this post. And now we're going to ban you from doing live streams for 30 days. I never got that message. So it's complete hogwash. But what it really means is that, Facebook can do whatever they want. They can actually affect your income negatively if for whatever reason they don't like you. Facebook really is Big Brother. They really are. Mark Zuckerberg wants his own currency. He wants everything. He wants it all. He feels like he can make it all happen because he has Facebook and he has all these people he controls. He controls their opinions. He controls whether or not they communicate with their friends. So I'm only going to be doing live streams on YouTube, which means that if in fact you want to participate live, you'll have to go to YouTube. And I'm asking people to at least subscribe to my channel so that you'll get the notifications when a show is coming up, like this one. You'll know, oh, wow, Carl's going live. This is what he's talking about. I can't listen live, but at least I'll listen later. The other thing is the only other place that the video will be available from now on is at superhumanradio.net. We're redesigning the website. There's a little challenge right now, but every page of every podcast has this video too. So if you like videos, you just have to go to superhumanradio.net, find the show you like, click and go to that page, and you have your choices. You can listen on the player. You can download the MP3 to your phone. You can watch the video. Or obviously, if you subscribe to one of the podcast aggregators like iTunes and Stitcher, iHeartMedia, or any of those, you can go there and listen to it on their app. Replays will be available on Facebook. We're debating whether to do entire replay videos or just excerpts of the video. And I think we're going to do excerpts of the video. I really don't want to do much with Facebook anymore. In fact, I don't even want to spend any money advertising anything on Facebook anymore. I just think Facebook sucks. I really, really do. I'm not just saying that out of frustration because of what they've done. But the reality is that they really don't give a damn about anybody except themselves. So that's it. If I sound like sour grapes, I am. From now on, YouTube is the place to go if you want to participate in the live show. Now, I have to thank Aiden Ray because he posted this and tagged me in it this morning. So hold on, let me get it. Oh, where the hell is it? Why isn't it up there? Okay, hold on. I'll bring it up. There we go. So Aiden Ray posted this on Facebook this morning and said, Carl Lenore, you've been saying information is the new selection pressure, where you get your information from. And it's true. I've been saying that for years now. The new evolutionary selection pressure of whether or not you will be healthy and thrive and live, whether or not you'll be healthy enough to have children, whether or not your children will be healthy enough to live, is no longer feast, famine. It's no longer the climate, because it's not. We're talking about climate change, but it's all livable no matter what. It is now where you get your information from. It's where because the information you get influences the decisions you make, the decisions to eat or not eat, or what to eat, or sleep or not sleep, or what to. So it really comes down to the information. This is why organizations like Facebook, Twitter, and the media are so powerful today, because they will give you information. And if you believe that information, it will dictate your decisions. And if that information was flawed, if it was biased, if there was an agenda behind it and it's not accurate information, you're going to make decisions that are going to impair your health, maybe shorten your life. So in March of this year, I wrote an article that said the relationship between the sun and COVID-19. And it's still on the website. You can search it on Google. You can Google Superhuman Radio, sun, COVID-19. That's all you have to do. The article will come up. And I showed in that article and cited science that proves that A, the higher your 25 hydroxy levels, your D3, if you're supplementing with D3 or you're in the sun, the least likely you are to catch the virus. That was just proved. And I did a show 2-3 weeks ago with an Israeli scientist who proved that. A well-done study has now showed that the higher your vitamin D levels, the least likely you are to be infected by this virus. Think about that for a second. Do you hear anybody talking about that in the media? While everybody's waiting for a friggin' vaccine that may or may not work for 50% of the population? So if you're not already taking 25 vitamin D3 cholecalciferol, you should be if you're worried about this virus. How much should you take? Get your blood levels tested. Go to any lab test now or one of those places in your area. Have your blood levels tested. Results come back at 2 days. You want to be up in the 50 nanogram or above, but no higher than 80 nanogram range. So the sweet spot is 50 to 80. If you're not there, start supplementing. Start with 5,000 IUs a day and have your blood work done again in a couple weeks and see where you are. But get into that 50 to 80 range. And research has been shown now that the higher your D3 levels are, the least likely you are to die from this virus. Is there any reason why Fauci isn't on TV every day telling people to go out and buy vitamin D3? Oh, wait, that's right. Because he was the CEO of the vaccine company that's rushing to market a potential vaccine. Now, I'm not saying he's making money from it, but they already said the vaccine is only going to be 50% effective. That means that 1 out of 2 people are still going to get COVID-19, even though they get the vaccine. But one thing is for sure, it's conclusively shown that vitamin D3 works at protecting you from getting the virus or dying from the virus. Yeah, Facebook wants us to all be sheep. You're right. You're absolutely right. I just saw this too. Alan Guri, thank you so much. Great show. Entire series on the body's response to pulse intervention. Yes. Yes. Steady state administration. Got to get back to work. He's right. Everything from fish oil to growth hormone likes to be pulsed or it becomes ineffective. But anyway, getting back to this topic. If you have not read the blog post, I will post it in today's show. Go to superhumanradio.net, find today's show, and in the description, I'll have a link back to the blog post. But if you don't need to be convinced by a blog post, get your D3 levels tested, keep them between 50 and 80, supplement with vitamin D3, and stop worrying about COVID-19. That's the truth. When you read the article that I wrote, It's very well sourced for research that I provide, scientific studies. And it's even effective at keeping you from getting HIV. Think about that for a second. Like why isn't every doctor in the world auto-dialing his patients and saying, I'm sending you lab prescription. I want you to have your D3 tested now. Why? Why aren't they? Oh, wait, because it's not a prescription drug and Big Pharma doesn't make a nickel on it. I saw an article the other day that said, if every diabetic in America understood that going on a low-carb diet, reducing their carbohydrates, increasing their protein and fat, would completely reverse their type 2 diabetes, and six major pharmaceutical companies would go out of business in a day. Think about that for a second. Think about that. Why isn't every doctor telling every one of his type 2 diabetes patients, I'm going to reduce your medications. I want you to stop eating carbs? Why? Are they sinister? Do they want people to stay sick? I don't believe that. I don't think doctors do. I think doctors are worried about being sued because if they don't follow the standard of care that is accepted by the American government, they end up getting sued and lose their license. It's time for people to wake up. We are in a renaissance right now of thought. And it's not the thoughts, but the fact that people are starting to think. We need to question everything today. Even what I'm saying, go do the research, find out for yourself. But the bottom line is, we have to stop taking everything the media, Facebook, and Twitter tells us and forming opinions using it, because they all have agendas. They all have a reason, a bias. They all want us to do things. They want us to take actions, and they want those actions to be what they want it to be. D3, D3, D3. Keep yourself healthy. Keep your family healthy. All right, we're going to say goodbye for today. We have good shows the rest of the week. Thank you for those who showed up on YouTube today to participate live. We're going to try to get a movement going and get more and more people to subscribe to the YouTube channel so they'll be notified of shows. And of course, you don't have to be here live to be notified. You can always go back and watch the show later. And of course, visit superhumanradio.net often. Okay, that's all I got for today. Thank you for being here. And we'll see everybody tomorrow with more. Share the show, please. Share the show. Share the show.